Hail victory, President Brandon. With all of the subtlety of a Nuremberg rally, the President of the United States went on national television with a blood-red backdrop, two U.S. Marines, God, that must have been embarrassing and for them, and a bottom-lit American flag to warn the nation of the threat of MAGA Republicans. This is infuriating, and it was designed to be infuriating by a man who desperately wants to matter. He, at the beginning of his presidency, consulted a number of historians to try to get them to tell him how he could evoke the spirit and power of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, without understanding that for better or worse, the spirit and power of Franklin Delano Roosevelt happened because of the Great Depression, which destroyed this country's wealth and damaged its society, and the Second World War, which threatened the existence and freedom of mankind. What narcissistic nonsense to think that those good old days are worth bringing back if the presidency can be elevated to an imperial level and his personality can save the day. This bitter, nasty little man, this hack, this plagiarist of British politician Neil Kinnock and other British Labour Party leaders, this mediocrity par excellence, is desperately trying the most scurrilous demagoguery to be relevant. I couldn't invent a more compelling case for Republican candidates in November 2022 than Joe Biden going on camera like a fascist or communist dictator, warning the country of the existential threat that is the loyal opposition. This is a man whose election was doubtful. And even if it happened the way the mainstream media says it happened because of a global pandemic and the dislocations caused by that global pandemic. For the first time in his presidency, Biden is looking down the reality of a Congress, House, and Senate that may change hands, cutting off his questionable, dubious policies at the knees. And his answer is to go on national television and demand that the American people stand up to the fascism of today's Republican Party. Now, when I first saw this, I was angry, which is the point. This subgenius Alzheimer's patient, and I say that knowing that my favorite president, one of my favorite actors, and my grandmother, and now my mother, all suffered from variants of that malady. This senile hack is trying to provoke the more damaged and fragile on the conservative side to take some precipitous action that would justify the further imposition of a police state, much like they tried to use one short riot filled with agent provocateurs on January 6, 2021, as a latter-day Reichstag fire, the Reichstag fire being the pretext for Hitler to demand and receive emergency powers, ending the Weimar Republic. Hopefully, no one on my side will rise to that bait. An agent provocateur might, but that's beyond our control. And since the Democrats, not just Biden, but the Democrats rule by panicking people after a crisis into stampeding to let them have yet more power, the playbook is clear. As the election approaches, make people desperate, stoke the fires of hatred and division, damn one's partisan opponents as outside the pale of the American mainstream, and use the coercive powers of the state against your domestic opponents like a latter-day General Field Marshal Idi Amin Dada, savior of Uganda. That is what the President of the United States looked like. But while irritated, the true reaction that I have, it's sad, it's pathetic. It is so shamelessly, ridiculously desperate. It is a sign of Biden's weakness, of the moral and intellectual bankruptcy of his policies, and of the reality that in order for the environmentalist woke utopia to be built, the American way of life must be destroyed. And the thing about Americans, as we see our way of life being destroyed, we're not going to keep supporting the people who are destroying it. So create a distraction, create a crisis, and turn a republic that has lasted the better part of 2.5 centuries on itself, strictly and solely so you can role play, cosplay Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Well, to paraphrase that nasty Texan Lloyd Benson, as a historian, I knew Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Franklin Delano Roosevelt was known to me. Senator Biden, you are no Franklin Delano Roosevelt.